Wow, we got Thanksgiving's next week, right? So a week from Thursday. Man, we're into the holidays already, and it's just crazy. We were coming down to the River House yesterday, and we had Christmas music on at Sirius XM, and it was kind of felt weird because it's like, man, I'm not feeling like we're in the holidays yet, but we are. Right. So yeah, look, we've all got to pay attention to what we're doing here during the holidays. Have some fun with it, but keep on keeping on with your business because this is the time to again wrap up for the year and start planning for next year. And I have to apologize, I did not get what I promised last week uploaded on your business planning with the Chat GPT link. So I will actually get that. What I'm going to do is instead of emailing out there, but I'm just going to go ahead and upload it to the Facebook group so that way you can just have access to it on your own whenever, and it will also remain there. So you'll continue to have access to it. All right. So you can expect to see that today. What I wanted to do, there's some. I wanted to use today to kind of get some updates from wanted to talk to Brian. There was also I think I put a question in the email about FHA. And I'm hoping, Brian, you can clarify. I know I kind of last minute sent a question to Brian about a notification I got. And I'm like, oh boy, we need to dig into this and let's see what the deal is. And I've got a FAQ that I'll share with everybody as well once we get to that point. And then Elliot has agreed to give us an update as well on the appraisals and what's going on in our marketplace around the Orlando Metro and appraisals and things like that. So Brian, why don't you go ahead and take it and lead us off with the latest mortgage updates, what's going on in that, and then we can dive into the FHA.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Good morning, everybody. So I have three main topics that I wanted to bring up. And then, of course, as you guys know, this just kind of pop in, answer, ask any questions, and I'll make sure to get an answer, whether raise your hand or throw in the chat. And then outside of those three, which those that will not take the full hour, we can talk about FHA and then anything else that you might want me to cover. So I'm going to start with probably what was, I think, one of the biggest headlines last week, and then I guess some people are still, I'd imagine, going to talk about it this week, which is the proposal for 50-year mortgages. So just to kind of get back, like, it's an idea ultimately, and for it to actually become legal, it does have to involve getting amendments to certain rules already in place, probably the biggest one being the Dodd-Frank Act, which does not allow 50-year mortgages to not be a thing. So the the White House and everybody in there can say whatever they like, but until we actually see some legislation passing, it is nothing but an idea. I've had a few people ask my opinion on it. I don't share it unless they ask. So my opinion is that it is, pros and cons, but it is kind of like taking an auto loan and doing it for 84 months instead of 60. And we all know how that goes. And the only difference is your home's going to appreciate instead of depreciate like a car, but the payment towards your equity is going to go even slower. So your buildup of equity will go slower. Anybody thinking about taking PMI off once they hit that 20, or surprise, actually now in some cases 25%, will be even slower as well. So those are some of the cons, right? That if someone ends up wanting to sell that house 2, 3, 5 years down the road, they will have a lot less equity to move on to the next property. The pro of it is that it does, in theory, give some flexibility, more flexibility, to where, okay, your payment is lower, but you can choose to pay more if you would like. So I could definitely see more people taking advantage of it if it becomes a thing, but we'll see. A lot of people don't know because majority of the public goes to their retail banks or their retail lenders or those that have huge marketing budgets online or commercials. And none of those put out that there are 40-year mortgages available right now. And that's something that I've had in my toolbox for almost the last couple of years. I can tell you that I've actually never closed any. I've maybe only had three that were even intrigued or thinking of it as an option. And all of those three were for investment purchases. So you kind of think about it, if you're buying an investment property, and to make numbers real easy, say you do a 30-year mortgage and okay, the monthly payment is $1,000. But if you extend it and you do a 40-year, now that thousand becomes 800. If it's an investment property, now you're cash flowing an extra two. Pretty simple math. So that's the only time that I've had, again, three prospects for that type of program, because they don't care about the equity. It is simply a cash flow play. And they are aware that, okay, yes, I'm not building as much value there, but they can put extra funds towards that if they would like. So a 40-year mortgage is out there. 50-year is kind of just on, I don't even want to say on the horizon, just still an idea for the time being. And that's the emphasis I put whenever someone brings it up to me. Um, Talking a little bit more about 40-year mortgages, just so that you guys know. And I'm not necessarily trying to sell this. I just want you guys to be aware that it exists and there are pros and cons to that too. I'll get past the obvious ones that we already talked about. When you do go with a 40-year mortgage, and I'd imagine if the 50-year becomes a thing, this will be the same case. The interest rates are higher. So think about it, if you're going to get a vehicle, what I've seen as well is that if you get a 48 or a 60-month term versus an 84-month term, those lower terms are going to have better rates. The same case of a 15-year or a 20-year mortgage will have better rates than the 30. So the longer you go, the higher the rate it's going to be. And that is still very true. The second thing about 40-year mortgages that's out there is that in some cases, you can actually go interest only on a 40-year mortgage. Now, that, yeah, Paul's already shaking his head. That's out there. Again, not something that I am pushing and not something that I've even personally closed in my career, but it exists. And the only time that we even look at it is if someone is dead set on an investment property. And I think everybody here knows about what in our world is DSCR, debt service coverage ratio, where if the mortgage is $1,000, I've got to show that you can rent it for at least $1,000, right? And if we're struggling on that, and we cannot get that mortgage payment lower, and the rent is 1,000, but the mortgage is 1,300, what can we do? Okay, if we push it to a 40-year, now that 1,300 becomes 1,100, but we're still not there yet, right? So then another alternative is take that 40-year and now make it interest only, and now that 1,100 became 950, and now you can get the property. So it's a way for us to get in the door, but again, I don't need to tell you guys how risky that is, and it's only for truly the most savviest of buyers and know what the heck they're getting into. So that's the very first thing I want to talk about, was just that the 50-year, again, is an idea. The 40-year does exist. And the lower you go with the term, just like a vehicle loan, the rates are going to be better. Anyone have any questions or want to talk more about that? Or does that all that kind of sound make sense?
I think that people just need to keep it in mind. Yeah, it could be a good alternative to have these options, but I see it as dangerous ground. And maybe not for the overall economy, but for that individual that thinks this is a good idea. And then in 2 years, they got to get it out of their house because something has changed, right? I mean, this happens all the time. And so we have to make sure that when we're working with buyers and they're considering this, we just want to give them all their options and give them, the pluses and minuses and where does this really fit into the overall picture? Because yeah, it's is it saving you that much money to go to 50-year? I think the 50-year thing is wrong. I hope it doesn't pass. I don't see that providing more affordability. But I think that, one of the problems we have with affordability is the fact that everybody just has, a champagne taste on a beer budget because, everybody's got to have the, stone countertops and nice cabinets, the fancy tile versus carpet, all the things that raises the cost of a house as opposed to just a basic house, no frills, which will create more affordability. But the builders aren't doing that. There's no incentive for them to do that. They make more money when they add more to the house. So I just don't think that the mortgage is the answer to making things affordable other than, even if interest rates get lowered much more, if we see a big drop coming in 2026, I think that could hurt the market as well and hurt affordability, because then what happens is, well, the demand goes up because interest rates are down, and then the prices go up. So it's really a serious issue. But Val, you got your hand up.
You muted, Val.
You're muted, Val.
Thank you. I keep thinking of like, we've got some kids that need to enter the housing market and eventually soon. So, within the next 3 years, it would be great to get them into a home. So the only reason I can justify this 50-year mortgage to them as far as an option is to get in the home while your income's low. I mean, over time, their income will go up, but I will like kind of read them the riot act saying that, you either want to refinance this sucker or you're going to want to put more principal down as you go along as you can to get out of this thing and not let it stranglehold you, because the banks win with these, um but these kids with their student loans can't get into these houses. So, unless there's student loan relief, which I don't think there is, so that's the only loan you take to your death. So, you can't get out of it. So that's my only justification for this 50-year loan. I don't like it at all, the idea of it, but if it helps a few that have the right mentality about it, maybe that's a go.
Yeah. No, well, you make a good point, and I don't want you guys to worry or think that the 40-year is something I'm pushing your buyers when you send them to me. That is not the case. It is
Yeah.
only ever a piece of conversation if, and I is a huge if they're saying they've found the perfect home, but they need that monthly payment to be at $2,000, and we're at 22 or 2,300, and I've already exhausted all of my other options, whether it be buying down the rate, lower home insurance, trying to get seller concessions, whatever the case may be. Then that's like a last resort, I would say. So that's, to Valerie's point, that's really it. Is if somebody's saying they have to get in this property and we need the monthly payment to be at X, that is a one way of going about it. But it's not, again, it's definitely not for everybody. I'd say it's for a very, very small group. So anyways, that was the first point. You guys have any more questions on that? You already know what to do. Just don't hesitate. Reach out to me. All right. The second thing that I wanted to talk about, and Paul alluded to it a little bit, is interest rates. So to give you guys a little bit of insight, what's going on there and what we expect moving forward. So as of Friday, we'll have rates coming out here in about just a little over an hour. As of Friday, the average mortgage rate was 6.38. So 6.38 is actually a 2-month high. So it's the highest that we've been in the last couple of months. Now, if you look over the course of all of 2025, we are still on the lower end. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can. Am I able to share my screen? If not, let me see if I can send an image. Where are you?
Yeah, you should be able to share.
Okay, let me give this a shot. Just so you guys can see what we see.
Yeah, can't see anything. There we go. Yep.
All right, you able to see it?
Yep.
All right. So occasionally I get realtors ask me, and sometimes buyers, what's the best place to check on rates? Mortgage News Daily, by far, is the most accurate, not Florida Realtors Instagram or any other Facebook or Instagram posts. Mortgage News Daily is up to date, kind of hits you with the reality check of where rates truly are at. So I highly recommend, and they do have an app as well. So I've got that on my phone. You could just open it up and immediately it'll tell you what the average rates are. So you can see it on the right side of where everything is as of Friday afternoon. But just take a look at the chart, and we have been on a very steady decline. So we're currently right here. And we do kind of expect Fannie Mae is truly the leader on prediction markets for our mortgage rates. And they are predicting that we're going to be this time next year at the average of 5.9. So that is a 0.4 decrease over the next 12 months. So when all of your buyers every single day, probably again later today, I'll get asked, where are rates going, Brian? What does my magic 8 ball say? And it is a trickle down, like drips out of a faucet going down. So I've been trying to push some of my clients to refinance that over the last 2, 3 years bought, and I had to get them in the 7% and say I can get you into fives right now. And the belief is that they want to wait until lower, which okay, we might go a little bit lower, but that opportunity cost might be too big. So I sometimes I try to show that, but there's a psychological piece that I can't get past of wanting to still wait. But anyway, so you guys are aware. 6.38 right now, expected 5.9 this time next year. I try to push this too whenever, and we don't need to talk about that the Fed does not determine mortgage rates, right? That's at least in this group, that's a known statement. But I do want to push that when the Fed has a meeting, if they are expected to either cut the federal funds rate or keep it the same, I think it was 8 times out of the last 10, mortgage rates either stay stagnant or go up. So a lot of people still think that when the Fed cuts it, then we're all of a sudden going to see a rate drop, or people want to wait to lock until the Fed has their meeting. We are going kind of like a, for lack of a better example, think of like someone's trying to like bet on a sports team, right? And there's already and the game is next week, and there's already an expectation that this certain team is favored. And so if you want to bet and win $5 on this team winning, you got to put $20 in to win $5 because even though the game is a week or 2 weeks away, they're extremely favored to do it. That is exactly what the mortgage world and all the banks and lenders in our world do is they predict that the Fed is going to do X, Y, and Z on, the next meeting is December 10th. And they already priced mortgage rates based off of that. So we are expected to either have a basis point cut in December or keep it stagnant. We don't expect it to go up. So with that in mind, all of the mortgage rates between now and then are already accounting for that. So if they are correct, and when that happens on December 10th, then again, rates will stay stagnant, or at times they might go up a tiny bit because we've already priced in what we expect to occur. And if we're wrong, God help us, the rates are going to go up. But they haven't been wrong. So, anyways, that's a little bit of insight on rates and where we think that's going to go. And the last point I'll make is that we are, there's been last week was a roller coaster. I don't know if any of you guys see on my Instagram, we talk about how basis points go up or down every single day. And to give you some context, 100 basis points equals one full percentage point. All right. So like from a 6% to a 5% is 100 basis points. Normally we see daily very small increment movements, 2 basis points, 5 basis points. I mean, 7 or 8 is even kind of high, one way or the other. So an increase is rates going up and down, and then or the other way. We've been seeing last week 11, 12, 17 basis point moves every single day. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's huge. So last week was a roller coaster. And I think a big contributor to that is all of the data we didn't get during the government shutdown is just being spat at us. And it's just being, hey, here's everything you missed for the last 35 plus days. So I still think that we're going to have quite a bit of a roller coaster for the next week or two until things calm down after all the data's been circulated. And then again, that Fed meeting, don't really count on it. If your buyers are kind of thinking that's what they want to wait for, tell them no. And if they don't believe you, tell them to talk to me and I'll tell them no as well. So those are my thoughts and pieces for interest rates. Any questions, thoughts, ideas on that?
Well, I'd rather see it trickle down at a slower pace because if it just jumps down, it's going to create chaos. And really, I think that around 6 is really a good normal. So hopefully it will level out there and just continue in that realm. Maybe we'll see as low as 5. That would be nice too. But we have to remember that supply and demand, and we don't have enough supply as it is. And there's been no mention about trying to control Wall Street and their purchases. So as long as they're in the game, they're gonna make things challenging for the average person. Um, so we need the ability to give people, the ability to finance a home, and get in at reasonable cost. So I don't know. There's this could be debated for days as to what the government needs to do, and I even hate to say that the government needs to do anything, because that is always an unreliable source. But I think that yeah, I think that people tend to watch and listen and, oh, interest rates are going to drop, right? Well, no, that's the Fed rate, and they don't understand. So the better we understand, the better we can explain to them that there's no major correlation there. That it interest rates could go up even if the Fed rate drops. So
Yeah. And to that point, Paul, and I think I might have told you guys this before. I know I've spoken about in some classes I taught. The best way to get an idea of where rates are is look at the 10-year Treasury yield. You guys can literally just Google 10-year US Treasury yield. See whatever that spits out, add roughly 2 to 2.5, and that's where mortgage rates are going to be. It's that simple. So US 10-year Treasury yield, add 2 to 2.5. Mortgage-backed securities, which that's truly what controls our rates. They are extremely correlated to the 10-year Treasury yield. So, I mean, I just Google 10-year Treasury yield right now, and it is sitting at 4.139. So 4.139, add 2, I'm at 6.1, add 2.5, I'm at 6.6. So right in that range, right? We just said the average is 6.38. So 10-year Treasury, I mean, if you want to just be specific, add 2.25 to it. And that's really what you're going to see. And I do want to emphasize too, before I move on to the last topic, and then we can talk about FHA. It's an average, right? The 6.38 is not going to be for everybody. I do have clients right now that are putting 20% down, great credit scores, primary residence, and they are by all means in the fives. I don't show them any options in the sixes, right? We are down there. We absolutely are. I'll throw something even crazier to you. I closed a VA veteran refinance last week, and it was 4.75, right? So we are down there. But on the other hand, there are those that might not have the best credit scores or need down payment assistance. Those are high sixes. Those are still low sevens. Those are out there as well. Hometown Heroes is a great example. Hometown Heroes is still fluctuating between 6.2 to 6.5. Florida Housing is controlling that. So it is an average, right? And I know I'm preaching to the choir. You guys know this, but it's to push it on the buyers that if they get a 6.7 or a 6.5, no, the lender's not screwing them. Well, I can't talk for everybody else. I'm not screwing them. It's just, it comes with their specific picture, their financial picture. And I think maybe some of you guys might have seen in my class where I talked about this before. There are 31 factors that determine somebody's interest rate. Credit is one of the biggest, but there are 30 others. So it is truly a wild goose chase when someone just asks me, Brian, what's my rate going to be? Oh, I don't know, man. So anyways, 6.38 is the average. You guys know I'm on the wholesale side, so we tend to be a little bit lower. For the most part, I'm in the mid to high fives right now. All right. Last topic on my side, and then we can Paul hit me with some FHA, so we'll talk about that too. All right, AI. So I brought up before that AI and mortgages were really helping us internally. We have you can almost call it like a Chat GPT version for mortgages specifically. So you guys ask me any question I don't know the answer to, give me 15 seconds, I'm going to grab it, right? And that has helped. I can't even tell you how, I can't really put that into words, how much that's helped me. I mean, even having calls with clients and they're telling me their story, but there's one piece of question they asked, I didn't know the answer to it. And while they're still talking, I'm getting that answer. So that's how AI started with us and how it's been helping the mortgage industry. Now it's been helping consumers and still a little bit us in two major ways. One, it is helping us with follow-up calls to past clients. So any buyers or borrowers doing a refinance that I've had and have closed in the last 3 years have probably received either a text or a phone call from my AI assistant called Mia. And Mia calls and says, "Hey, Cindy, this is Mia. I work with Brian at Two's Lending. He helped you buy your home at XYZ Main Street a couple of years ago. I'm reaching out on Brian's behalf because you might have an opportunity for a refinance." And then most of the time, I get a transcript of the call. Most of the time, the person calling goes, "Are you AI?" To which Mia says, "Yes, I am." And then goes on to ask, "Would you be interested in speaking to Brian about the potential for lowering your rate?" I will tell you, most of the people say no, they think it's spam or just hang up or whatnot. But I have closed 2 refinances from Mia just reaching out, and these people saying, "All right, I'll just talk to Brian because I know Brian, I like Brian, I'll speak to him." And I pull a quote together, and that's that. So AI is helping on that front. So if you do have any of your buyers that we work together and they say, "Hey, Paul, I got this spam call from Brian," it's not spam. It's AI. It's just a way to help me help our business to to help them, and we're lowering their rate. Mia would not be reaching out if there wasn't something positive for that client. So we're not calling people that we cannot help. And then the second thing, which I thought was really cool, is AI is now helping with one of our HELOC programs. So HELOC, home equity line of credit, right? There are HELOC programs we have where I still go through the whole process, get the pay stubs or tax returns, et cetera, et cetera. But we now have, and I've had this for now, say about like 9 months, and I haven't. I feel like I keep saying this. I need to do a better job of marketing it, but I think I'm a little scared, or maybe scared that people are going to think they don't want to deal with this. But there's a HELOC program where we use AI to determine that borrower's eligibility for their income, their assets, and it's only a soft pull in their credit. So we're getting a HELOC with no hard pull. We don't need their bank statements, and 9 times out of 10, we don't need their pay stubs or W-2s. If you're self-employed, they do ask for tax returns. They grab the transcripts from the IRS, but they still need your actual returns. So it is limited to no documentation. The AI is taking your financial picture, grabbing all of your information online. Now you have to, or I do it for you, where I plug in your social, your date of birth. So they have the info, your address, they have the info to go and grab it all. Then they grab it all and they don't need anything from you. Also, for this HELOC, 9 times out of 10, we don't need an appraisal either. So if you guys have seen me post closing a HELOC in 3 days or 5 days, it's this. It's literally this, where you call me and you say, "Hey, I need $75,000. I think I have a good amount of equity in my home and my credit's looking pretty good at 740 plus." Okay, let's get your information. Just tell me over the phone, 5, no more than 10-minute call. I'm going to plug it in. You tell me how much money you need. And before end of day today, I'm going to have an answer for you. And if you say yes, today's Monday, we're closing by Friday. And that's that. So it's wild, guys. But this is out there. It's been out there. I actually will sometimes use this if any of you guys has sellers and need to convert it to buyers. And we've talked about bridge loans before, right? We all, hopefully, and I will continue to push that bridge loans are, in my opinion, the most complicated loan program there is, because there are 3 transactions going on at the same time. Your sell side in the middle, which is the bridge, and then the buy side. Not to say we can't do it. You guys know I've done quite a bit of them, but it is the most complicated one out there. Versus grabbing a HELOC, an AI taken HELOC. That borrower now has the money in less than a week, and then I can have them pre-approved to go shopping for a home. And we don't need to deal with a bridge. We don't need to deal with anything that involves, "Hey, I need to get X, Y, and Z from your listing so that I can get the bridge and then the buy set." No, it is just, let me get this HELOC done, give me 3.5 days, and then we move on. So I try to utilize this to remove the bridge loan program. It's cheaper too, as well. With this AI HELOC, I'm allowed to offer up to $750,000 in equity. So It's as low as 35,000, as high as 750. So 50, 75, 100, all good. Um, the terms could be anywhere from 10-year to a 30-year. Very similar to our first concept. The longer the term, the higher the rate, right? The shorter, the better. Rates are looking looking pretty good there. They're anywhere the highest, excuse me, the lowest I've seen is like high sixes, so like 6.8, 6.9, and then they do get into the eights depending on that profile. So high sixes to somewhere in the eights for the HELOCs there, but it's automatic. It is super quick. One other piece I'll add about this HELOC, which is crazy. It's my only HELOC program actually, where we can be in third lien position. So I don't need you to pay off if you already have a HELOC. We can just get one on top of it if you have the equity there. So again, it's uh pretty crazy. I'm trying to think of a better word than crazy, but I couldn't. So we have AI HELOCs that are helping us close in under a week if your buyers need some cash, or if you're sellers. I will say one piece to it though, if your sellers are thinking about it or you're about to take on a listing, one of the very first thing the AI looks for is to see if that property is for sale. So if you have that listing on the MLS or Zillow or wherever, it automatically declines the HELOC. So that is one little trick that if we're avoiding the bridge and we need to take funds to do this, hopefully we have had this conversation before you have listed their home. Because I know you guys and the sellers don't like having a listing, taking it down to do the HELOC and then put it back up. And the AI sees that too. So anyways, that was one unique program I wanted to bring up that I haven't spoken about yet, but it's pretty cool. I've done, I think, three so far, and it's as wild as it sounds. But any questions or thoughts, concerns on that one?
Yeah, that's actually sounds like a pretty good program. It's like my wheels are turning. It's like, okay, do I go with that? I'm still wanting to try do some improvements on my house across town, and just trying to figure out my best way to get that going. Dagmar's got a question. Dagmar, go ahead.
Hey, I do have a question. I don't know about you, but the first thing that came to mind is, wow, what type of security measures are in place when you're putting in people's social security numbers and stuff into AI? That would be a deterrent for me.
For sure. No, I hear you. Well, I, I would tell you that the program is with one of our lenders that we already use. So it's one of the lenders that, say you gave me a buyer today and we get them pre-approved, they go under contract, and I'm shopping rates for them. And one of my, I'd say like top 10 lenders that I always use, um, it's one of them that just now has this program. So even though I'm mentioning AI, it's not like essentially an AI lender per se. It's one of those that it's not UWM, but some of you guys have heard of UWM. So it's something similar to that, where it is a huge, ginormous mortgage corporation that now is offering this program. But yeah, 100%. I hear you, Dagmara, because it is me putting in your application, your date of birth, your social, and AI is going and grabbing all of your financial life it can online. That's what it's doing versus me asking for pay stubs and W-2s and kind of putting the picture together myself. It's going and doing it for me, essentially.
Maybe what I would recommend is asking that lender or whoever it is, when you do pitch it, give a backstory of how secure it is and what measures are in place or something. Because I don't know, maybe it's just me.
No, it's not just you. I think it's a very fair point. And I've had those conversations. I mean, I've had to when I've done these closings or trying to do these transactions because the client's asking, so you don't need my pay stubs, so you don't need my bank statement, and that's pretty wild in itself. Where the only piece of document I'm asking for is a copy of your driver's license, and everything else they're going to grab. So yeah, I've had to have those conversations. So far it's gone well, but yeah, your concern is absolutely valid, without a doubt.
All right. Well, very good. A lot of good information. Brian, what about the,
I have
go
a
ahead,
quick
Val.
question. Can they get around someone who has their security frozen on the 3 credit bureaus?
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure
They'll
that
have to
gets
be
triggered.
released.
Yeah, that it has to be released. It has to be unfrozen.
Okay,
Anytime.
well, there's a security point that people can control on their own, because I suggest to everybody, freeze it all down and then you can release it at will. So just
Yeah.
a suggestion. Anyway,
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Yeah, absolutely.
So I actually, sorry, Paul, just Valerie, answer your question really quickly. On another screen, I have the guidelines for this AI HELOC, just in case you guys asked me a question I didn't know the answer to off the top of my head. And one of them was credit. So I just looked it up, and I'm reading it straight from the guideline here. You will need to have the borrower unlock or unfreeze specifically their credit with Experian. So they can actually keep Equifax and TransUnion frozen. Looks like we're only looking at Experian. So just one
Yeah.
out of the 3.
Very cool.
thank
Good
you.
deal. And then Brian, touch on the that FHA refund we were
Yes.
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, we can dive into it. And Cindy, I see your question. I read that assumable mortgages were under discussion to help sellers move to their next home. What are your thoughts on the future of second mortgages? So assumable, for better or worse, I'm out of that equation, just because you have to deal with the actual lender, that the sellers are already with. Future of 2 mortgages. So are you, and just to clarify, and then Paul, we'll get into FHA for sure. Cindy, are you asking me the thoughts on, like, if I have, you're saying, like, okay, if I'm wanting to buy a house, I'm going to take over that person's mortgage and then get a second mortgage for that,
Difference.
the difference? Yeah. Um, my opinion is that if the buyer can afford it and they want that home, that it makes sense. Now, I think Paul brought up before, there's a company, there's a program that does that, that will help with the second lien, or I don't know if it was in this call or another one.
It was me.
It was Dagmara.
I
Okay,
sent it to you. Yeah.
that's right. Thanks, Dagmara. I knew it was someone from here, but so there's programs out there that will take care of it. So you assume the whatever 3% rate mortgage, and then if you don't have the 100 grand difference, then Dagmara found a company that will do a loan for that second piece. My personal opinion is I think that's great. Even if, again, I'm out of the equation, does not involve me at all. But if someone can snag, say, a 2.5% rate, and then that other 100 grand they don't have is, even if it's high at like 7, 8, 9%, you could do something. You could just Google this. It's called a blended rate calculator, like a blender. So blended rate calculator, and you could put in, say, make stuff up. Let's say that the assumable mortgage is $300,000, and that is at a 2.9%. And then from Dagmara's link with Rome.com, we'll give you the other 100 grand at 8%. You can put both of those in the blended calculator and it'll spit out and say, okay, Cindy, your true rate is 4.5% when you combine the two. And that's amazing. Without a doubt. Now, I don't know any, because again, I'm not connected with Rome or assumable mortgages at all. So I don't know the experience, but if someone can actually go through it and get into home that way, I think it's a great route for sure. So, and if I ever am allowed to work with Rome or do something similar, I'll let you guys know. But currently not in my wheelhouse. All right.
It'd be like a HELOC for you.
Yeah.
Almost.
The challenge though is that I can't do a HELOC until you own the property. So, right, if you're trying to buy the property but you need that 100 grand spread, I can't give the HELOC based off of you don't own it yet. As soon as you own it, then yeah, I've got you. So maybe you have the 100 grand, get in there, and then if you want to take that cash back out, okay, then I can do the HELOC. Absolutely. But to get in the door, I would have to wait. I'd have to wait until you're actually have the deed under your name.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. So Paul reached out to me and wanted me to discuss a little bit about FHA. There is a specific, very specific piece to FHA that a lot of people are not aware of. And actually, I remember, Dagmara, you and I had a conversation about this about one of our buyers, because the buyer was saying, "What? Why the hell is Brian charging me an extra $7,000 more in closing costs than everybody else?" Um, and of course, the buyer's not coming to me; they're yelling at Dagmara, and Dagmara's like, "Hey, can you please explain this?" So I don't remember the client Dagmara, but I do remember we had this conversation. So with FHA, we all know that it has PMI, right? And it's there monthly. But there is a second piece to the mortgage insurance, and it's called upfront mortgage insurance premium. So again, two types of mortgages, the one you pay monthly, and then there's one you have to pay upfront. FHA has both. You get conventional, it's just monthly. So what FHA does, UFMIP, so upfront mortgage insurance premium, or UFMIP, whatever, if you want to say that. But it is 1.75% of the mortgage balance. All right, 1.75%. And let me, do I have it on here just to make sure? I was going to show you guys this chart. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, the loan amount. 1.75% of the loan amount, not the purchase price. So if you take, make numbers super easy. If your mortgage is going to be $100,000, then your upfront mortgage insurance premium is $1,750, right? 1.75. Now, the buyer is allowed a choice. That this hypothetical $1,750 can be added to the closing costs, and then you just pay it out of pocket, or maybe the seller pays. Or you can have it rolled into the mortgage. It is one of the very rare cases that when someone says, "Brian, can my closing costs be rolled into the mortgage?" This is one of those very few rare pieces that the answer is yes. So that 1.75 in this example, 1750, can be added to the mortgage. So instead of your mortgage balance now being 100,000, it is 101,750. So that is how that part works. And what I was talking about with Dagmara and me seeing this is that on our buyer's closing costs, it showed that there was a $7,000 charge on closing costs, and that was the upfront mortgage insurance premium. And what I had to explain to the buyer is that, yes, you are paying this $7,000, but it is being financed. It is being into a part of your mortgage. You can choose to take it out, but 99 times out of 100, the FHA buyers just leave it into the mortgage. Now, if that buyer decides to refinance, they refinance still into another FHA mortgage. Say their credit didn't get high enough, or FHA rates, they are lower than conventional. Okay, so 6.38 was the average for conventional. FHA is lower. I don't remember if it was low sixes or high fives, but it is lower. So that FHA buyer refis into another FHA. Do they have to do upfront mortgage insurance premium again? The answer is yes, but there's a caveat there. If they are refinancing within 3 years of when they bought the home, they will get a discount on their mortgage insurance premium. The amount of the discount depends on how soon they're deciding to refinance from when they bought. So I'm going to share my screen one more time here so I can show you guys. Let me get to. All right, let me know when you guys can see it. Good. All right.
Yeah.
So this is a handy dandy chart that we use. So this is the refund chart. So again, let's keep using that made up example. $1,750 was their mortgage insurance premium when they first bought the house, FHA. If they decide to refinance 1 month after they bought it, if rates all of a sudden take the elevator down and now instead of 6%, they're at 5%, so they refinance immediately, that new mortgage insurance premium, they're going to get 80% off. Okay, so if it's not going to be 1750 again, it's going to be 20% of that if they're refinancing that quickly. And then you can see as it changes as we get further away from when they bought the property, all the way to, again, 3 years. If you bought it on the 36, excuse me, if you refinance on the 36th month, then you'll get 10% off of your new mortgage insurance premium. And then after that, you don't get any discount. So it's kind of similar to, I mean, some differences obviously, but it's kind of similar to when a title company says if you bring your title insurance documents, you get a discount, right, on that premium. So this is kind of similar, and a lot of people are not even aware that that mortgage insurance is anything other than the monthly. But FHA specifically has this piece, and then to very few times do we even get into this conversation of showing them how we're going to save them even more money. So I always try my best to make them understand that this is another piece that they have, and that if we choose to refi, we do it within 3 years, you're going to be still, even if we kept you in FHA, you're still going to be technically saving money. So this site, My Mortgage Insider, pretty good information there, but honestly, you can just Google FHA mortgage insurance premium refund chart, and this will be one of the first sites to come up.
Yeah,
But
that seems good if you're doing a refi. And I just put in the chat a link to the FAQ on that. One of the things, and I was asking about Brian, is not necessarily on a refi, but it just says that who may be eligible for an FHA refund. And basically, I mean, it seems like it doesn't matter if you refi or not. It just seems that if you've originated a loan in certain timeframes and you haven't defaulted, that you could be due a refund. And I just didn't know if you knew anything more on that, because caught my eyes. I thought about refinancing the house across town, but I'm at 3.75%. And because I wanted to get rid of that monthly MIP payment, but I was like, well, once rates started shooting up, it's just like that's just not going to happen. I'll just keep it where it's at. But when I saw the article on this, I was just like, man, this is really intriguing. And I don't know if you know anything more outside of the refinance part. If there's I just haven't had a chance. I just came across this a couple days ago, so I haven't had a chance to actually to even dig in myself to find out more. But you guys have got the FAQs, and that might be something worth digging into, right? Giving you a reason to reach out to past buyers if you can indeed find out about their eligibility. There is a phone number to HUD that you can call. I haven't called it yet. I plan on it because I want to see, what the actual requirements are. What do I have to fill out? There's apparently some, forms. So I'm gonna at least attempt it. I got nothing to lose by attempting it on my FHA loan, but I bought the house in 2017, and so I'm 8 years in, right? I can't eliminate that monthly payment, but I mean, that's I put $3,400 up front for that MIP, and it'd be nice to get that or a portion of that back, right? So that's the way I'm looking at it.
I'd be very curious to hear your results, Paul, because
Okay.
this is new to me. So I've always been under any, heck, I even went through an FHA certification class roughly about like a month ago, and this was not brought up about being able to get a refund on your mortgage insurance premium without refinancing. Everything they kept pushing was the chart and knowing that within 3 years and that the percentage decreases. But not once did the teacher bring up that you need, or that you can get a refund without refinancing. So I'd be if that's something even they don't know, I'd be very, very intrigued to hear your result.
Well, if that was a teacher for like teaching mortgage people and continuing education or something like that, the focus is on,
Yeah,
helping them
getting
in
another
other
deal.
parts, right?
Yeah,
So
it was.
So
Yeah.
yeah, all right. Well, I'm going to dig deeper into that this week. I'll let you guys know what I find out. But you've got the Q&A as well now. You've got the link, so feel free to check it out. And I just think that that's just also a great way to be able to reach out to people that hey, you're presenting some value and helping them look out for things. So Brian, I appreciate your you're coming on today and giving us all this on the mortgage. And I did want to give Elliot a chance to give us an update on the appraisal situation. Elliot, can you give us a brief accounting of what's going on with appraisals and how are things looking out there in that realm?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, kind of mimics what's going on with mortgages and rates. And, there's obviously, affect appraisals because a lot of people are purchasing and refinancing. And that's when an appraisal comes into play. So, I know in the end of the third quarter, Orlando Regional came out with their numbers and they saw about 1,800, I think it was single family homes, with the median price of about 406,000 is where we were at the end of the third quarter. And I think existing single family home sales were up slightly, like 1.6% year over year. And the median held about 410. It was down about 1.2% the year prior. So, I mean, what we're seeing is obviously we're shifting out of that frantic seller's market that we were in for a few years during COVID and going into a little bit more of a balanced kind of environment. Demand still remains, but supply is rising and price appreciation is leveling is kind of what we're seeing right now. So in the past, I mean, we would see appreciations anywhere, obviously depends on the area, but I'm just talking general. 5 to 10% is typically kind of the appreciation you would see year over year on your property. And what we saw, from 2020 to 2022, 2020 into 2021, I mean, month over month, we were seeing anywhere from 20 to 35% increases in pricing. And so it just, extrapolated things, absolutely out of control, nothing we'd ever seen before in the real estate market, at least in our lifetime. And so with that, what it's doing now is having to level off. And that, of course, what Brian comes into play as rates go up, people qualify for less, so people can't purchase as high. So it starts to kind of bring everything down. And so we're starting to see that, more so in the appraisal world as well. We are starting to see, at least I'm starting to see a lot more refinances right now than we had seen, which makes sense, as Brian mentioned, with rates down to, high fives, low sixes. We are starting to see people that I think purchased in 21, 22 at those 7-8%, starting to refinance. And so we're starting to get a lot more of the refinance work than just the purchase, which is what we were getting a lot, in the last 2 years or so. It was a lot more purchases just because rates really hadn't come down much. So it didn't make a lot of sense for people to have to refinance. So on the appraisal side, what we're seeing now is, if I have a dated sale, so if I'm using it, let's say, my appraisal is today, November 17th. If I'm using a sale from, January of this year, or even, almost a year ago, November of last year, typically in the past, we would need to make what's called a market condition adjustment. So we would need, if we were to take that home from November of last year and put it on the market in on the market today, in this November of 25, theoretically there should be an increase in value because we're seeing, increasing value as well. Right now, what we're seeing is more of a stabilizing market. And so if I have that dated sale from November of last year and I put it in my sales grid, and if we were to put it on the market in November of this year, theoretically, we really shouldn't see any sort of increase. Everything's leveling out. So if that sale sold for 320,000 in November of last year, I'm not making any sort of time adjustments or market condition adjustments, what we call them, to bring it to today's market, because we're all just seeing a leveling. So these dated sales, they're all, in the real estate world or in the appraisal world, obviously, lenders love to see 90 days or newer sales, but we're not always getting that. So if we're using dated sales right now, we're not making any, at least I'm not making any sort of adjustments, or I'm not seeing any adjustments that are warranted from a dated sale to today's market. So with that, what we're seeing is a lot of just leveling is what we're seeing right now in these appraisals, which when we're looking at, our ending values, it makes sense. I mean, there is no real warrant for an adjustment when we're looking at, if the time is the only thing that's, a variable there, we're not seeing a warranted adjustment for time. So that's kind of, the biggest difference we're seeing in the appraisals nowadays versus what we were adjusting for maybe a year to 2 years ago. In the past, we would would have made an adjustment from November of last year to November of this year because we were seeing increasing markets. But right now, overall, we're really just seeing stabilizing markets. I've talked to some colleagues where they've actually seen some decreasing markets, and they've actually put decreasing on the appraisal, which then, of course, opens a huge Pandora's box for Brian and other lenders because, lenders don't like to see decreasing markets when they're loaning money. But I personally haven't really seen any decreasing markets. What I've just seen is more stabilizing. And, what I'm usually doing is comparing. So I'll have my kind of my geographical market of where my home is. Let's say it's in Deltona, so I'm using Deltona. So I'm doing usually 6 month averages. So I'm taking, if the appraisal was the effective date was today, November 17th, I'm going 6 months before that, and then 6 months. I'm sorry. I'm taking the year back, so I'm going like November of last year till April of this year, looking at that 6 month quadrant, and then taking April to November of this year, and I'm looking at the month over month and the year and the 6 month over 6 month to see if there really is any sort of adjustments warranted. And for the most part, what we're seeing again is just that stabilizing market. We'll see, 600 sales with an average, price per square foot of 220 from the prior 6 months to the current 6 months is usually very, very similar to that. I mean, within 0.2% to 0.5%. So again, what that's doing is it's just reaffirming that there really is no market condition adjustments needed. And what we're seeing is an overall just stabilizing market. And so as we've seen with COVID, where there was, extremely high sales, right now we're also seeing a lot of, extremely low sales where, everybody has, different motivations for why they're selling. And so we have to look at that as well. We have to make sure it was an arm's length transaction. And there are always going to be those outliers, in the market, those really low sales where they had to sell because they were facing foreclosure and they just needed to get out of it versus, during COVID where we saw these crazy high sales because of various factors. But overall, obviously we don't have the great migration anymore to Florida, so we're not seeing as high of a demand. And again, we're seeing more supply starting to hit the market now. So again, just overall kind of stabilization is what we're seeing in Central Florida.
That's great. That's great. Brian, you got a question?
Yeah, thanks, Elliot, because that actually gives a lot of insights, and the realtors are yelling at me of like wanting a new appraisal or something. I'm in disagreement with this, but I'm never the one that has the final say. So again, I keep my opinions to myself. But I always have realtors, and if the buyers are aware about a reconsideration of value, to try to turn that in and fight the appraiser. Have you ever, whether it be your case or any other appraisers ever seen that were like, okay, yeah, I did mess this up, or I should change this value because of X, Y, and Z. Have you ever seen that happen? And if so, like any tips on like what would help our case when doing a reconsideration of value? Again, I'm not a big fan of it. I trust that the appraiser is doing the right job, but normally it's agents that are saying they want to fight it. So any tips on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that is obviously the biggest thing we get, especially in this market right now with the stabilization and, sellers thinking their home's worth one thing and then the appraisal comes back and, the agent was thinking one thing as well, because a lot of the times they like to use, the price per square foot to kind of, to justify the list price. And so that can get them in trouble sometimes. And so with the value of reconsideration of values, personally, I have, and I've seen colleagues, they have changed things. So in my instance in particular, I actually had a value reconsideration done about 3 months ago, September, so about 2 months ago. And they were correct. So what this situation was is I'm part of Aura, of course, in the MLS, but there is also the New Smyrna Beach that has their own MLS. It's a very small regional MLS that we don't have. We have access to through what's called Flex or MLS Advantage. But it's not always something that, when you put a home on the market in New Smyrna, you're not always putting it on Stellar. And so we appraisers are only as good as the data that we have. And so if we don't have access to certain data, we may not have that information. And so it was brought to my attention that I did miss a comparable that was on the MLS for New Smyrna, and it was not on Stellar's MLS. So I did miss that one. I did try to cross-reference the site we have, but it's a terrible site, MLS Advantage. I'm sure I don't know if you guys use it at all, Paul, but it's very like I don't know, basic, rudimentary. It's very tough to use. It's not user friendly. So I did miss that comp. And so when they brought that to my attention, I did look at it, I did evaluate it, and it was a great comp, and it did actually change my opinion of value. So in that situation, actually, it did work out in their benefit. Because again, like I said, we're human. We do miss things. We don't always have access to all of the data. So in that situation, like I said, it did change it. I would say though, the best things to look out for are really the biggest determinants of factor in value, which is, always looking at the living areas. So sometimes living areas aren't always correct. So you may want to verify with property appraiser. That's always a good one. If there's, significant upgrades done to it that may not have been addressed, bigger picture items like, granite countertops, the kitchens, the bathrooms, major flooring type things. I had somebody rebuttal, the value because they had done some, what was it? They did some crown molding and they put a Ring doorbell in. They gave me kind of a list of the things that were really just kind of basic, non you as an appraiser, we're looking at the bigger picture. We're not really itemizing list, upgrade by upgrade. It has to be the bigger picture. And so if there was, major improvements done that may have been missed, that's always a really good argument to have on the rebuttal side of things. And, as the real estate, broker myself, I've tried to rebuttal appraisers too, because I'm looking at this like I don't, I don't agree with the value. But you're really having to look at the bigger picture of items, not these smaller kind of minute things that wouldn't really adjust the overall picture of the value, if that makes sense. It's more of the bigger items. So location, so maybe they didn't see that it had a water view, didn't see that it backed up to conservation. Maybe there was, like I said, the condition was better. There was, the ACs, the water heater, everything were updated within the last 5 years. And so that could have brought the condition from maybe a C3 to a C2. And so that could adjust the value accordingly if you could prove that. If there was like an enclosed porch that wasn't addressed, or if there was, outbuildings that weren't put on the report that could, those could have added some value to them. So I think when you're looking at the rebuttals, if you don't see better comps, but you're just trying to argue the comps that you have are better, you're really looking at, variables that are going to increase that value, overall in the bigger picture, not just, well, you didn't notate here that it had tile instead of carpet compared to, this other house. It's just not enough to move the needle.
Thank you.
But with comps, like I said, always if you see better comps, obviously newer comps are always going to be better than dated sales for the most part, and obviously location's a big thing too. So the other big thing I've gotten was well, you didn't use this comp, but this comp was 4.5 miles away. The comps that I used were within a mile, and so sometimes that becomes an issue, is where the agent thought that they could have used this comp because it was a better comp, but in actuality, at least the Fannie Mae selling guidelines always say you try to use the subject's immediate subdivision first, and then you go out from there if you have to. But value is always going to be the sales within the community are always going to indicate the best value for that subject that comparable. The subject that you're appraising. And so, like I said, sometimes they'll say, well, this one was better, but again, it was in a different market, and so that could not produce as credible results.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's great information. And just as a suggestion too, as listing agents, providing those comps up front, especially if it's questionable property and you had to do special searching to help find some comps, is to provide those comps to the appraiser as you meet with them at the house, right? Because you're going to know when the appraiser's coming. So put together a packet and say, hey, this is how I base the price on. All right. And that helps to give them a head start. And if they can't, not justify it because there's nothing else, maybe the home's not in a subdivision, there's nothing else nearby, or it's a unique property, that's going to help in your case. So some appraisers I know over the years I've seen that, they take offense to that, but most appraisers I think appreciate it. So yeah, it never hurts to do that and provide, if there's ever any question or doubt, just put it together and give it up front so that maybe you won't have to worry about a rebuttal later on.
Yeah, we'll just say one more thing. Concessions, as Brian sees now, it's just a lot of sellers are giving a lot more concessions than they had in the past to get these deals done. Where in the past, concessions were very hard to get. So that's another part of the value reconsideration we get to as well. There was X amount of concessions given. How do you analyze that when you're doing the appraisal? Are you giving any sort of adjustments for that? And so you always have to look at the concessions too, which can greatly impact the value. I mean, if the house sold for 460, but it was given 20,000 in concessions, at least the way that I was typically taught, we're usually giving about a dollar for dollar amount of adjustments for those concessions. And so that's something that the agent may not, realize as well. It's sold for this, but again, you have to look at the full picture. Well, there was a lot of given in concessions, and that takes away from the seller's net proceeds, and so that will impact value, and so that has to be addressed in the appraisal. And so that's something else that we're seeing a lot more of now than we did a couple of years ago. Is just the amount of concessions that these sellers are giving to buyers to make the deal happen. And so that impacts the value as well.
That's actually a great point, because I just had I had a clear to close go back because the appraiser or the appraisal got done, and then there were seller concessions added after, and then they said that we needed the appraiser to add the seller concessions back onto the report. And both realtors were up in arms, not understanding why, and I didn't know. But that answers the question. I mean, it was $5,000. It wasn't a huge chunk of change, but I and I now understand that it could ultimately change the value or how you guys see it. So thank you. That really helps. I wish I would have known that a week ago.
And that's why on the appraisal report, if you look at it, I think it's on page 2 under the neighborhood section. It talks about, are there any seller concessions given? So it is a very important part of the appraisal process because it can impact value. And so that is something that needs to be talked about in the appraisal, and the underwriters will question that as well.
Thank you.
Of course.
Very good. A lot of great information. Cindy, thanks for your comments. She says great stuff. So appreciate you guys all being here. I know we've gone way beyond the top of the hour, but I really wanted to have an update on these items because this is going to be continually affecting how our business flows in the future. So I think that it's important that every so often get updates on the mortgages and on the appraisals so that we can stay up to date and we can be best prepared, because there are going to be some bumps in the road as we start seeing more and more valuations dropping. So we didn't really get into the twirly girl today. I apologize for that, but I'm going to save that for next week because it really is important for anybody that wants to do more with social media. It's just a great example of what you can do very easily and start growing your business. Because this girl, I mean, she's got less than 100 friends, but she's getting tens of thousands of views on her reels. And so it's important to share that with you. So because I thought I had a few hundred views on my reels. I thought that was cool. Now not so much. So
You gotta start twirling. You gotta be twirly
what's
guy.
that?
You gotta
Yeah,
start twirling
I
or
got to
something.
become twirly guy, right? Yeah. So, but yeah, we'll talk more about that, right? Because social media is still important, and it's a necessary evil, and we've got to master it if we're going to use that as one of our tools. So, guys, I appreciate you all being here, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. So if you need anything in the meantime, feel free to reach out. Happy to help out in any way possible. But we will be on, even though it's going to be Thanksgiving week. We'll be on next Monday. So hopefully you guys will be available and still jump on, so we can help to keep the momentum going, because we will hit Monday in December as we go away, and then of course Christmas and New Year's, and that we'll probably take a 2-week break. So, but I do have an attorney set up. We've set a date. I'm still working on the DBPR investigator. Hopefully, we'll get him on soon too, because a lot of things we need to talk about with advertising. So, all right, guys, have a great week, and I appreciate you all being